Hi and welcome to the latest edition of the MiMentor Coaches Coffee Club. Today we're going to be speaking to our coach development mentor Jamie Godbold, a former FA tutor, and the subject of this conversation is going to be observation. So to get us started, Jamie, just let us know what the difference is in your mind between observation and watching a football match.
I guess the difference between just watching something and observation is just based on learning something whilst you're watching. So, for example, if I on a Sunday afternoon, I'll just be watching the game on the telly and just enjoying it as a fan. If I'm observing, then I'm trying to take something from the game, whether it be something tactical from the players or something regarding an individual. So the main difference between watching and observing is just the learning that you take from it.
So when observing a match, is it about looking at the whole picture, or is it looking about the whole match, or is it about specific parts of the match?
I think if you are specific with what you want to observe, then you'll probably see more. Um, if you're not specific with the things that you want to try and see or learn, then you probably see very little.
So Jamie, in your experience, are there any common mistakes that coaches make when observing football matches?
I guess the common mistakes that people make are just following the ball and therefore only ever see what's happening on the ball at that particular time. And I guess a lot of the stuff that happens or that you want to try to improve on might happen before the ball even arrives to you. So if you're looking at movement or intercepting and you only ever follow the ball, then you only see that moment. So I guess that's one of the common mistakes that people make. And secondly, I think coaches just become emotionally attached to the game, and a lot put winning as a focus. And I think once you're emotionally attached and you feel involved in the game, is another reason why you see less. Which is probably why rugby coaches watch their teams play up in the gantry from high up. They're less emotionally attached to the game. They see more from the sort of view that they're taking up. They've got screens all around them to review and record things. So yeah, that's another common mistake.
And how about something like observation bias? Where would that sit? Is that a mistake, or is it just something that coaches should be looking out for when they are observing games?
Yeah, I think once coaches have a set idea of a player or a team in their mind, um, they see the things that they want to see. So let's say you go into a car garage and there's a particular car that you like, and one of the reasons that you like it is because you've not seen too many on the road, or might be a particular colour. So you decide to go for that car, and then you drive it off the forecourt, and within a couple of minutes you see either the same car or the same colour. And you've just never noticed it before, so it's not something you'd look for whilst you're driving, but once you've got a hit, then you just see more of them, and it's a little bit similar to a football context. There might be a player that you've been told does uh, that's not very good in the air, but the first three times that he's challenged to header, he wins it, and then the fourth time he loses it, and therefore that kind of you're looking for things to confirm your beliefs. So I guess that's the observational bias. Um, you see things, coaches are become attracted or attached to players that they have stuff in common with, um, and then outside of that, those that they have less in common with, you tend to see more of the stuff that they're not very good at.
So how would you say that coaches could go about improving their observation skills then, Jamie?
I think first of all, just be really conscious. of it. So if it's something that you want to develop as a coach, then you need to be really conscious of it. So go into a game and say, I need to improve my observation skills. And I think you probably automatically would just take 2 or 3 steps further back from the pitch. I think you would say less, um, as opposed to being right sort of front on the of the touch line and barking instructions or parading the touch line as uh, some coaches do. So I think just taking yourself out of that, out of the way a little bit. And secondly, be really conscious of what you are looking for. So it might be something you've been working on in training. Um, and I guess I've always sort of looked at grassroots football as the match being the test at the end of the week. So going in and trying to observe what it is that you've been teaching to see if they've picked it up. Using people around you, so using an assistant, using parents if you wish to record some of your behaviours or your mannerisms, because I guess it observation is a really undervalued, underutilized skill, and I think it's a really important skill to help coaches help their team or individuals get better. Without good observation skills, I don't think that we could properly give the feedback that's required, which is why the teams use video analysis a lot, which is another great tool because I think once you see a game back, sometimes you see a different game because you are looking for different things or you are looking for things in particular that you might not have been looking for in the game. Use pen and paper to make notes on so that you don't forget. There's a lot that happens in the game. Um, so making notes of things that have happened so that you can go back to them.
So when it comes to, say, a match day, and coaches are often focused on the development of their players and giving instructions and helping them through their games, is there a call to say that perhaps sometimes it might be using that match day as an opportunity for the coach to develop themselves, because they can't do everything on a match day, but instead of maybe focusing on the players' development, perhaps focusing a little bit more on their development and the development of their observation skills, which will have a positive impact on the players further down the line.
I think that probably what scares coaches a little bit is that if they're observing more, they're probably saying less, and actually the um, what parents think that coaching looks like from the side is, because I guess they see it on Match of the Day, is Pep Guardiola, Jurgen Klopp stand at the front of the dugout barking instructions, and I think for kids it's slightly different. It should be different. We're there to help them enjoy the game first and foremost, and nobody likes being shouted at, particularly in a negative way. Um, but I guess stand at that and almost, so if you work away from the ball a little bit more and you wanted to shout instructions, um, then it should be away from the ball. So, for example, if your team's on the attack, then check the positions of your defenders and check the position of your goalkeeper to see if they're in the positions that might prevent a counter attack. So that you are almost working on a what if scenario and using your experience of the game to predict what might happen next, which is something that young kids in particular don't have don't have the experience to predict what could happen. And the only reason we know that what could happen is because we've played or watched or observed lots of games before. So I guess that's one way of observing at the front, where if you are if you want to help players on the sideline in a vocal fashion, um, then working further away from the ball and being able to share to your players what could the what ifs, what could happen.
So our team has had a game today. For example, I've observed them playing. I've observed the things that I want to observe in the match. take that information home, what would the next steps be? Because obviously there is a required outcome that you're going to want to achieve from your observations.
I think that's the key point. Once you've made your observations, then what next? I think they almost form part of your next training session. Particularly if it's around the theme that you're working on, your team might have done really well, or equally they might have really struggled with it. Um, so it forms your observations, then form part of your coaching session, or form part of your conversations with players that involves. Um, and it just keeps coming back to wanting to improve your team and wanting to improve the individuals within your team. So and I guess if a game's gone particularly badly and you observe some things that you didn't like, actually then 2 or 3 days that you have before your training session, you approach that scenario slightly differently with the player once you become emotionally detached from it. And it's more of a conversation rather than a heated discussion, if you like. Um, so, I think it also gives the players a chance to reflect. So, in between the training session and the game, you might post a question to the parents of that child, and just ask what they thought of X, Y, and Z. And then that conversation becomes a lot easier if you're kind of on the same page. Um, So yeah, observations form the basis of the learning for either the next session or something that's coming up further down the line.
So, Jamie, is there different types of observing? Do coaches observe, or can they observe certain scenarios in different ways?
Two types of observation that I see a lot of from grassroots coaches. Passive and active observation. And I guess the difference between the two is the amount of engagement that you have with your players. So passive might be the one where you sort of sit back and just observe and just make notes and say very little. Um, and whilst you're not saying little, whilst you're not saying much, you're being able to observe so much more. And active observation is probably where you are more engaged with the game or the training session. So um, I guess coaches their styles are very different dependent on whether it's training or match day. Some are really passive on training days and active on when they're stood on the touchline when there's 3 points or there's a win at stake. But yeah, the difference between the two is the amount of engagement that occurs. I guess in passive observations, you see a lot more because you've taken almost a few steps back in order to be able to see more. And active, you're probably more vocal, asking more questions, giving more direct instructions, and therefore you probably see a little bit less, but you're making then observations on what you have seen.
We've touched on the fact that the job of a coach isn't easy, so they can't really do everything. We all know that there's a lot that a coach needs to do. But are there any techniques or things that they could do to maybe get other people involved in the observation process? Perhaps getting the parents involved in it, and maybe that could sort of help foster a sort of growth mindset across the whole setup, and get the parents engaged a little bit more in the development of the players.
Yeah, I think the parents one is you can speak to parents about their own child and the way they performed after the game, and I think they tend to give you an honest assessment of how their child performed. Um, and I guess there's probably two key bits of information. One is when you're observing, you tend to not just observe one player in particular. Where a parent watches probably tends to observe their own child more than anybody else's. So actually sometimes have a really good opinion on how their child might have performed. So asking that question initially to parents might be a good start point. Um, by and then I know some coaches make that process probably a little bit more formal through the use of analysis sheets, um, by using tally systems to mark the number of successful passes or the number of successful shots. And I think that's just more, that provides more evidence to help with your training session, or to help form an opinion on how they might have done. So I know we've spoken a lot about individuals um, already, but from a team aspect, um, the 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 kind of analysis stuff that coaches use in pro clubs, they use a lot of video analysis. I guess grassroots coaches don't have that luxury a lot. So how else can we measure team team challenges, if you like? And you might use parents to help support that. But yeah, so to summarise that, use the parents to help you gauge feedback for their own child. 'Cause that car drive home might be a little bit different if there's more objective um, ways to measure someone's performance. So, for example, a striker might have had 25 opportunities in a game, and only scored 2 goals. Now, he might have only scored two, but actually she must be doing something right to have got them 25 opportunities. And you only do that if you have a player cam on them or a set of eyes on them. How does she keep getting the opportunities that she has?
So all this builds towards our course called the Art of Observation. So Jamie, is something that you've been heavily involved in. Just explain a little bit about the course and who it's aimed for and what they can get out of it.
This observation course, is for grassroots coaches of all ages and abilities. Observations are a really undervalued skill, um, and I think if a coach could master the art of observation, then they will see drastic improvements in their teams and individuals within that teams. We talk about the types of observations, how to observe, some of the observation biases that coaches have that perhaps subconsciously that they didn't know, and it has lots of helpful hints and tips for coaches to improve and develop their observation skills.
And there's also some stuff in there to help coaches lighten the load a little bit, perhaps get other people involved in the observation process.
I think the importance of just having more eyes to help the overarching goal of trying to improve players and teams. So being able to utilise parents and coaches, and making sure that we're all on the same page will effectively help us create a better environment and therefore better individuals and teams.
And there's a number of downloadable tools also in there, Jamie, that can help coaches analyse and observe their own matches and players.
So we have a few resources within the course, some stuff around match analysis, what opposition strengths and weaknesses, where they've hurt us, and how we can exploit their weaknesses. There's some stuff around some coach observations that you might want to get your assistant or a parent to observe you and your own behaviours. And there's a helpful resource around observation of your players. And that might be something that you complete or something that players can complete on their own behalf.
Yeah, it's a really good course, Jamie, and it's got so much insight and advice for coaches at all levels, but particularly the grassroots level. So everybody who has already taken it have said how much it's helped them and has given them food for thought, ready for when they're coaching their teams and watching their matches. So for anybody that's keen to learn more about the art of observation, then the course is available on the MiMentor platform right now. But that just brings to close another episode of the MiMentor Coaches Coffee Club. And We hope to see you again soon.